It was a crisp afternoon in a modest, bustling grocery store parking lot in a quiet middle-class neighborhood. The rhythmic clatter of shopping carts echoed through the air as families loaded groceries into their cars, chatting about weekend plans or hurriedly checking their lists. Children ran about, their laughter blending with the occasional honk of cars maneuvering through the lot. The setting was unremarkable, the kind of place that rarely drew attention beyond the daily errands of its patrons. Among the activity, a lone figure stood out, not because of what he did, but because of his sheer determination. Harold, a 90-year-old man with a frail frame and weathered features, pushed a long row of shopping carts across the uneven asphalt. His thin, bony hands gripped the metal handle tightly, trembling slightly with effort as he slowly moved the heavy load. The incline leading to the cart corral was small but felt like a mountain for someone his age. Harold's clothes, though clean, were worn and faded, a testament to years of use. His scuffed shoes barely cushioned his steps, and the lines on his face told a story of decades spent working hard. A simple name tag pinned to his shirt read, Harold, but there was nothing simple about the quiet resolve with which he approached his task. Despite the sweat forming on his brow and the occasional wince as he adjusted his grip, Harold never stopped. He moved with a sense of purpose, as if completing this task was his duty and no amount of fatigue or pain could deter him. Shoppers glanced his way, some with fleeting pity, others with indifference, before returning to their own lives. No one paused long enough to offer help or even a kind word. Harold's story wasn't immediately apparent, but his struggle was clear. After a life of hard work, retirement savings had dwindled, medical bills had mounted, and pride kept him from asking for handouts. He had chosen to return to work, pushing carts in the parking lot, just to afford food and the bare essentials. Each step he took was fueled not by strength but by sheer willpower. What Harold didn't know was that this ordinary day would soon turn extraordinary. A simple act of kindness from an unexpected stranger was about to change his life in ways he could never have imagined. Barron Trump stepped out of a sleek black SUV parked at the edge of the bustling grocery store parking lot. Dressed in casual jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and sneakers, he looked like any other young man running a quick errand. Despite his understated appearance, his tall stature and confident demeanor hinted at a presence that could command attention if he wanted it to. As Barron walked toward the store entrance, a scene caught his eye, an elderly man, hunched and frail, struggling to push a heavy line of shopping carts up a small incline. The man's thin shoulders were bowed under the effort, and his weathered hands gripped the metal handle tightly, knuckles turning white. Barron paused, his brow furrowing as he watched the man pause momentarily, shifting his weight before continuing. The man's name tag read Harold, and his uniform, though clean, was visibly worn. Exhaustion lined his face, but his resolve to complete the task was unwavering. It was a sight Barron couldn't ignore. Most people hurried past Harold, sparing only a quick glance before returning to their errands. But Barron felt compelled to act. Adjusting his stride, he approached Harold, his steps purposeful yet casual to avoid startling the older man. "Excuse me, sir," Barron said, his voice calm and polite. "Let me help you with that." Harold glanced at him, a mix of surprise and skepticism in his tired eyes. "Oh, no, thank you," he replied, his voice trembling but firm. "I've got it. Been doing this for years." Barron smiled, sensing the pride behind Harold's polite refusal. "I can see that," he said, nodding toward the carts. "But even the best could use a little help sometimes. Come on, it won't take long." Harold hesitated, glancing at the carts and then back at Barron. For a moment, he seemed ready to decline again, but something in Barron's demeanor, his sincerity and lack of judgment, softened Harold's resolve. "Well, if you insist," Harold said finally, stepping aside with a small smile. "I won't stop you." Barron grinned and took hold of the cart handle, effortlessly guiding the heavy load up the incline toward the store's entrance. Harold walked beside him, his steps lighter without the burden of the carts. As they worked together, Barron struck up a conversation. "So, how long have you been working here, Harold?" he asked, genuinely interested. Harold glanced at him, surprised by the question. "Nearly 10 years, he said. "I retired once, but life had other plans. Had to come back to work after, well, things got tough." Barron nodded, encouraging Harold to continue. Slowly, the older man opened up, sharing bits of his life, his long career as a carpenter, the joys of raising a family, and the hardships that followed his wife's passing and mounting medical bills. Despite the weight of his words, Harold spoke with a quiet dignity that impressed Barron. As they reached the store entrance and parked the carts, Barron turned to Harold with a thoughtful look. "You shouldn't have to work this hard," he said gently. "Not at your age." Harold chuckled softly, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and resignation. "Life doesn't always give us choices, son. But I manage." Barron smiled, his mind already racing with ideas. "Well, maybe it's time someone gave you a choice," he said, his tone firm with purpose. Harold tilted his head, puzzled by the cryptic statement, but before he could respond, Barron extended his hand for a firm shake. "It was nice meeting you, Harold. I'll see you around." As Barron walked into the store, Harold stood for a moment, watching him go. He didn't realize it yet, but this brief encounter was the beginning of something extraordinary, a kindness that would ripple far beyond the parking lot. As the carts were neatly parked in the store's corral, Barron turned to Harold, his curiosity growing with every passing moment. Harold's quiet dignity and tireless work ethic struck a chord with him. "You've been doing this for a while, huh?" Barron asked, casually leaning against the cart handle. Harold chuckled softly, his worn face creasing into a faint smile. "Yeah, almost a decade now," he replied, his voice tinged with both pride and exhaustion. "I retired once, thought I'd spend my golden years taking it easy, maybe doing some gardening or fishing. But life doesn't always go as planned." Barron nodded, sensing there was more to the story. "What brought you back to work? If you don't mind me asking." Harold sighed, his gaze falling to the ground for a moment before he spoke. "My wife fell ill about 15 years ago. The medical bills, well, they drained just about everything we'd saved. She passed 5 years ago, and I've been on my own since then." His voice wavered slightly but steadied as he continued. "Social Security doesn't stretch very far these days, and I didn't want to be a burden on my kids. They've got their own struggles to deal with." As Harold spoke, Barron listened intently, his expression shifting from curiosity to deep concern. He noticed the slight tremor in Harold's hands, the tired look in his eyes, and the wear in his voice. Despite the obvious hardships, Harold never sounded bitter or resentful. Instead, there was a quiet resilience in his tone, a determination to keep going no matter what life threw his way. Harold paused, glancing up at Barron. "I'm not complaining, mind you. I'm just grateful I can still work. Gives me purpose, you know." Barron's heart sank. Here was a man who had spent a lifetime working hard, raising a family, and doing everything right, yet his later years were filled with relentless struggle. It wasn't right, Barron thought. Harold deserved better. "You've been through a lot," Barron said softly, his voice filled with admiration. "I don't think I've ever met someone as strong as you, Harold." Harold shrugged modestly. "You do what you have to do." But Barron wasn't satisfied with that answer. He couldn't shake the image of Harold, at 90 years old, pushing carts in the scorching sun just to survive. It wasn't fair. It wasn't just. Harold shouldn't have to work so hard when he should be enjoying the peace and dignity of retirement. Barron's mind began racing with ideas. He knew he couldn't simply walk away after hearing Harold's story. A few hours of help or even a kind word wouldn't be enough. Harold needed real, lasting support, the kind that would ensure he never had to push another cart again unless he wanted to. As Harold thanked him for lending a hand, Barron placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It was my pleasure," he said with a warm smile. "But don't worry, Harold. I've got some ideas about how to make things a little easier for you." Harold tilted his head, a puzzled look crossing his face. Barron didn't elaborate but knew one thing for certain: this encounter was just the beginning of something much bigger. He was determined to make a difference, not just for Harold but for others like him. Barron couldn't shake the image of Harold pushing carts, his frail body bent against the weight, his hands trembling but determined. As he left the store that day, Harold's story lingered in his mind, filling him with both admiration and a deep sense of injustice. He knew he couldn't let Harold continue living this way. The man had given so much of himself throughout his life, now it was time for someone to give back. That evening, Barron sat at his desk, outlining a plan. His first priority was to ensure Harold's immediate needs were met. Through quiet inquiries with the grocery store manager and Harold's colleagues, Barron learned the extent of Harold's struggles. The old man was still paying off a small mortgage on his modest home, his savings were gone, and he relied on his paycheck for basic necessities like food and utilities. Without hesitation, Barron reached out to his family's network of financial advisors and legal professionals. Within days, he arranged for Harold's remaining mortgage to be paid in full. A stack of overdue utility bills was quietly settled, ensuring Harold would no longer have to worry about losing his home or living without electricity and water. Barron wanted Harold to feel the peace and security he so deeply deserved. But Barron didn't stop there. Understanding the importance of consistent support, he organized a monthly stipend to be delivered to Harold, covering his groceries, medical needs, and other essentials. Partnering with a local grocery store, Barron ensured Harold would always have access to fresh food without cost or concern. The day Barron presented Harold with these life-changing gestures was one neither of them would forget. Meeting Harold at the store, Barron handed him an envelope containing the details. "Your mortgage is gone, Harold," Barron said with a smile. "No more payments. And these cards will cover everything you need, groceries, bills, whatever. You don't have to push another cart unless you want to." Harold's hands trembled as he opened the envelope, his eyes filling with tears as he read the words inside. "I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice cracking. "This is too much." "It's not too much," Barron said, placing a reassuring hand on Harold's shoulder. "You've worked hard your whole life. It's time you enjoy the years ahead." But Barron's vision didn't end with Harold. He realized there were likely countless others in similar situations, elderly individuals working tirelessly just to survive. Determined to create lasting change, Barron launched a program dedicated to supporting elderly workers facing financial hardship. Partnering with local organizations, the initiative provided resources such as housing assistance, medical care, and financial aid. To ensure the program's success, Barron reached out to community leaders, local businesses, and philanthropists, securing funding and building a network of support. The initiative quickly gained momentum, inspiring others to join the cause. What began as an act of kindness for one man grew into a movement that brought hope and relief to many. For Harold, the transformation was life-changing. He no longer worried about making ends meet. Instead, he spent his days tending his small garden, visiting friends, and even volunteering at a local senior center to share his story and inspire others. Harold's life became a testament to the power of kindness and the profound impact one person's generosity could have. As for Barron, the experience reinforced his belief in using privilege to uplift others. "It's not about grand gestures or recognition," he said during the program's launch event. "It's about seeing people, truly seeing them, and making sure they know they're not alone." Barron's generosity not only changed Harold's life but also sparked a movement of compassion that continued to ripple through the community, proving that kindness, when combined with action, could transform the world. Harold's life transformed in ways he had never imagined. No longer burdened by the daily grind of pushing carts in the blazing sun or the biting cold, he found himself with time to enjoy life once more. His mortgage was paid, his utilities were covered, and groceries were delivered to his door each week. Harold could now rest without the constant worry of how he would make ends meet. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of security and peace. Freed from the physical demands of his job, Harold rediscovered the simple joys of life. He spent his mornings tending to the small garden behind his house, something he hadn't had time or energy for in years. Watching his flowers bloom and vegetables grow filled him with a sense of purpose. Afternoons were spent reading books he had long neglected, chatting with neighbors who were delighted to see him smile again, and volunteering at a local senior center. Harold wanted to share his story, hoping to inspire others who felt trapped by their circumstances. But the impact of Barron Trump's actions extended far beyond Harold's personal transformation. News of Barron's generosity quickly spread throughout the community, sparking a wave of kindness and involvement. Inspired by his efforts, local businesses began donating to Barron's initiative, eager to support elderly workers facing similar struggles. Grocery stores, medical providers, and housing organizations joined forces to expand the program, ensuring that no senior in the area would have to endure the same hardships Harold had faced. Community members also rallied around the cause, organizing fundraisers, volunteering their time, and advocating for policy changes to better support seniors. Churches, schools, and local charities began collaborating, creating a network of care that reached far beyond the grocery store parking lot where Harold's story began. It was no longer just about one man's struggles, it became a movement to uplift an entire community. Harold often reflected on how his life had changed. Sitting on his porch one quiet evening, watching the sun set over the horizon, he thought about the young man who had stopped to help him on an ordinary day. Barron's kindness had not only lifted the weight of Harold's struggles but had also restored his dignity and reminded him of the goodness in the world. In his heart, Harold felt immense gratitude, not just for the help he had received but for the way Barron had seen him, not as an old man pushing carts, but as a human being deserving of respect and compassion. Harold knew that this act of kindness had given him a second chance, and he vowed to make the most of it by paying it forward in whatever ways he could. At the official launch of his initiative, Barron addressed a crowd of supporters and community leaders. His words resonated deeply with everyone present. "When you're in a position to help, you have a responsibility to do so," he said. "It's not about grand gestures, it's about recognizing the struggles of others and doing what you can to make their lives a little easier. We all have the power to create change if we choose to." Harold, sitting in the front row, smiled as he listened to Barron's speech. He had been given a new lease on life, and now, through Barron's initiative, countless others would have the same opportunity. The story that began with a single act of kindness became a ripple of compassion, transforming lives and reminding everyone of the profound impact one person can make when they choose to care. The story of Harold and Barron Trump is a powerful reminder of the profound impact small, thoughtful actions can have. What began as a simple gesture, a young man offering to help an elderly worker struggling with carts, transformed not only Harold's life but also inspired an entire community to rally around a cause. It demonstrates that even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples far beyond what we might imagine. At its core, this story emphasizes the importance of treating everyone with respect, compassion, and dignity, regardless of their circumstances. Harold wasn't just an elderly man working tirelessly, he was a human being with a lifetime of experiences, struggles, and triumphs. Barron's decision to truly see Harold, to listen to his story, and to act with kindness and generosity, restored Harold's dignity and sparked a movement of care and support for others like him. This narrative serves as a call to action for all of us. It encourages us to recognize the humanity in others, to extend compassion where it's needed, and to use whatever resources we have to uplift those around us. Together, small, thoughtful actions can create a world where kindness and respect prevail, changing lives one gesture at a time.